In April of 2018, Kim Jong-un became the first North Korean leader to set foot in South Korea. In a historic meeting with South Korean President Moon Jae-in, both men met at the demarcation line that has divided the two countries since 1953. They shook hands, and then Kim proceeded to step over the line into South Korea. The difference in the two leaders' appearances was striking. Moon was dressed impeccably in a gray suit. Kim was in a militaristic black uniform with a severe haircut. The contrasting appearances summed up the differences between the two parties perfectly. However, both men chatted freely and they even smiled. On one occasion, Kim was clearly seen laughing. The world watched on, fascinated. Could this really be the start of something? Was this amicable get-together just possibly the beginning of not only a move towards a peaceful coexistence, but one day, just maybe, unification? Not too long ago, the thought of a united Korea was impossible to fathom. North Korea was developing a nuclear arsenal at an alarming rate. The North was also flexing its military muscle by conducting missile tests precariously close to South Korea and Japan. Meanwhile, South Korea was receiving significant defense funding from the U.S. Constant drills were being carried out by South Korea's armed forces alongside American personnel. Moreover, over the past 5 years, steps have been taken by both sides towards, at the very least, establishing some kind of peace. America has been at the center of this negotiation, which has required an acute understanding of the wants and the needs of both sides of the demarcation line. How likely is that to happen? Well, this depends on a number of factors. The first and most obvious is the stark difference between North and South Korea. One is a modern, economically advanced society with a highly educated population. Korean pop culture has even transcended Asia to the US and Europe. Such is its appeal. The other is a dysfunctional and isolated country living under authoritarian rule. A large number of its population is uneducated and many are unemployed, and starvation is common. On a ranking of economic freedom in Asia, North Korea ranks last out of 39 countries. But it wasn't always like this. Koreans lived together harmoniously until the end of World War II. Korea also experienced a 500-year dynasty, which was a remarkable period of innovation, scientific breakthroughs, and cultural expansion. The Joseon dynasty lasted from 1392 until 1910, when Japanese occupation brought everything to an end. Even under Japanese rule, though, Koreans were united in their plight. However, at the end of World War II, the defeated Japanese handed over the colonial territories to Allied powers. The country was split in two, with the United States controlling the democratic South and the Soviet Union claiming the communist North. It was decided to separate Korea at 38 degrees latitude, which was roughly halfway down the Korean Peninsula. This has since become known as the 30th parallel, or the demarcation line. Tensions rapidly rose between North and South, with neither recognizing the legitimacy of the other. In 1950, the Soviet and Chinese backing, North Korean forces marched into South Korea. America sent troops to back South Korea and the Korean War began, lasting until 1953. When the war finished, no peace treaty was signed, making for an uneasy standoff between the two. South Korea nevertheless went on to adopt a democratic free market system, while North Korea fell out under the communist rule of Kim Il-sung. And even today, a treaty is yet to be signed, meaning that the war has not officially ended. And so it's come to be. South Korea went from an underdeveloped, war-torn country in the 1950s to now boasting the world's 14th largest economy. North Korea, on the other hand, has the inevitable moniker of the Hermit Kingdom, by virtually cutting itself off from the outside world. North Korea has long been a thorn in the side of the West, who has been noticeably, understandably concerned at the regime's refusal to stop its nuclear buildup and missile testing. This has resulted in often severe sanctions being imposed by the US and Europe. Only North Korea's alliance with China, which buys over 90% of North Korean exports, has prevented more extreme action. The rhetoric between North and South Korea has often been hostile and sometimes threatening. All the while, America stands in the South Korean corner, while China and Russia have made no secret of their support for the North Korean state. This was the norm until 2018, when things started to change. In Singapore, in June, American President Trump met with Kim Jong-un. It was the first time that a sitting president had met a sitting North Korean leader. Trump made history again later that month when he became the first sitting president to enter North Korea when the two met again. Several issues were discussed, most notably denuclearization and Korean unification. Moon and Kim had met earlier in 2018, and the two leaders met again in Pyongyang in September 2018, this time with their wives. Kim and Moon both hugged before introducing their wives and then embarked on a tour of the North Korean capital. Both men agreed that unification was something that would benefit both countries. Moon said, "What I want to achieve is peace. Not a tentative change, but irreversible, permanent, and unwavering peace." However, things have soured a little since Moon's liberal government was replaced by the more conservative leadership of Yoon Suk-yeol in 2002. Yoon has made no secret of the fact that he thinks unification will be problematic as long as the current North Korean regime is in power. It would seem on paper that North Korea has everything set to gain from unification. Whereas, what's in it for South Korea? Actually, plenty, at least potentially. Goldman Sachs predicts that a united Korea could develop an economy that would transcend Germany and Japan. And here's why. Even though North Korea is seemingly in economic chaos, it has an abundance of minerals and natural resources, as well as a large and cheap workforce. South Korea has one of the world's most developed economies, exporting high-tech products such as electronics, telecommunications, automobiles, and chemicals. To manufacture these, South Korea is heavily reliant on imports. Combining the two could result in Korea becoming an economic juggernaut. It would also significantly raise the standard of living for future North Koreans. So far, so good. But how do South Koreans feel about this unification? Well, that all depends on who you ask. Older generations still have memories or emotional attachments to Korea before it was split. Ask someone under 30 and they'd be less likely to be in favor of unifying with what they see as a strange and isolated society. Many South Koreans would be wary of allowing millions of impoverished, uneducated, and unskilled North Koreans to integrate into their society. It would require a massive change of mindset and a willingness to adopt an emphatic and empathetic view towards their fellow Koreans. Unification would also mean a clash of cultural identities and national values. South Korea has an open society based on economic freedom. North Koreans have grown up in a society based on traditional Confucianism and a political system with Marxist origins. A contrast of interdependence versus self-reliance. It would seem that the transition will be most difficult for North Koreans. Dealing with a completely different ideology aside, there's the question of basic survival. Succeeding at school against highly motivated students from a free market economy is the first step. Then there's the matter of finding employment as a relatively unskilled worker in a competitive society, which will be very, very, very challenging. Most North Korean defectors to South Korea end up in low-paying jobs in the manufacturing and service sectors. It's been estimated that 43% of North Korean defectors work in labor, as opposed to 9% of South Koreans. This means a unified Korea would have to invest heavily in what are known as Hanwons, government-funded training and skill centers. This will naturally be met with resistance by many in South Korea who'll be, hesitant, who will resent even having to shoulder the cost of assimilating people from the North. The assimilation of North Koreans into a new society will be far more problematic than dealing with the political red tape. For various reasons, the obstacles to a unified Korea can seem to be simply too many to overcome. However, there does exist a genuine belief on both sides of the 38th parallel that it's not just possible, it is inevitable. The 2021 survey found that around 52% of South Koreans thought that unification would be good if circumstances changed, namely mass denuclearization and an end to the regime in the North. This change is most certainly possible. After all, both South and North Koreans share the same history, language, traditional culture. They share so much. From a South Korean point of view, unification can be seen as not just ensuring peace, but providing a better life for compatriots in North Korea. A South Korean unification minister recently said that, "We pursue a Korean Peninsula of co-prosperity." Politically, unification seems feasible, even if the time frame is unclear. Sometimes an outside perspective can be very useful. After recent summits between the US and South Korea, the US chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff was optimistic about unification. He said, "Eventually, people do tend to unify, one way or another. It just has to be managed closely and carefully to avoid armed conflict. Time will tell."